The man who destroyed my life did it with a smile, a gavel, and a solemn promise to save me. When that gavel came down in his courtroom, a place that reeked of stale coffee and desperation, I actually believed we were safe. I watched as the judge, this supposedly honorable man in a flowing black robe, looked at my 8-year-old daughter Maya. She had just been publicly shamed, her spirit wounded in front of the whole world, and I saw what I desperately wanted to believe was kindness in his eyes. He spoke of justice, of protection, of making things right for a child who had been wronged. And I, Elena Rivera, a single mother who had fought tooth and nail for her kid since the day I met her, finally allowed myself to take a single, shuddering breath. I didn't know then that his courtroom was just a more sophisticated kind of cage, that his help was the most dangerous poison of all. The man who was supposed to be our savior turned out to be the devil himself, and I had just gratefully walked my daughter and myself right into the heart of his hell. Before I continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, comment below, and leave your like. Helps a lot. Before that day, our world was small, but it was ours, and it was filled with a quiet, brilliant happiness. It was just me and Maya. I adopted Maya when she was 4 years old, a painfully shy little girl with enormous, soulful eyes that seemed to hold the weight of 100 storms. She had been bounced around the foster system, a cold, bureaucratic world that had tried its very best to convince her she was unwanted. But I wanted her. The moment I saw her picture on a county adoption website, this tiny girl with a tentative smile, I felt a jolt in my soul. I knew, with a certainty that defied all logic, that she was my daughter. I'm a high school art teacher. I don't make a fortune, my life isn't filled with grand luxuries, but it is rich with color and love, and I poured every last drop of that into the foundation of our new family. We built our little life on a bedrock of trust and creativity. Our weekends were sacred, reserved for painting sprawling, vibrant murals on her bedroom walls, for spontaneous kitchen dance parties to old soul music blaring from a tiny speaker, for me patiently teaching her how to braid her beautiful, coily hair into intricate crowns that she wore with a quiet pride. I made it my mission to teach her that her blackness was a masterpiece, that her hair defied gravity because it was reaching for the sun, that her voice, even when it was a whisper, deserved to be heard and respected. Over 4 years, I had the profound privilege of watching her transform. The shy, withdrawn girl who used to hide behind my legs bloomed into a bright, fiercely funny 8-year-old, who loved climbing trees to their highest branches and telling these elaborate, fantastical stories about warrior princesses with skin like polished mahogany who looked just like her. The day it all fell apart was, ironically, a perfect Saturday in June. The sun was a warm blanket on our shoulders, the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, and the local park was buzzing with that happy, chaotic symphony of kids playing. Maya had just gotten her hair done in beautiful box braids with tiny, shimmering turquoise beads on the ends. She was utterly enchanted by them, shaking her head from side to side just to hear the soft, satisfying click-clack they made. She was a blur of joy, her laughter trailing behind her like a ribbon as she raced toward the swings. That's when another kid, a little white girl with a big pink bow in her hair, pointed a chubby finger at her. "Mommy, look at her hair," the girl said, her voice piercing the gentle hum of the park. Her mother, a woman with a severe blonde bob and an even more severe expression, looked Maya up and down with an expression of pure, unadulterated disdain. "Don't stare, honey," she said, yanking her daughter's hand away. Then, turning to her friend standing right beside her, she added in a stage whisper I was clearly meant to hear, "It's a shame, isn't it? People letting their kids look so ghetto. It's just not appropriate for a park like this." That one word, ghetto, hung in the air between us, ugly and sharp and dripping with poison. I felt a hot flash of rage climb up my neck, but before I could even process it, the other mother chimed in with a smug nod. "I know, right? And so loud. They just run wild, you know." I froze, my heart starting to hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. My eyes shot over to Maya. She had stopped dead in her tracks. Her shoulders, which had been so full of life and motion just moments before, were slumped in defeat. She was staring at the wood chips on the ground, her bright smile completely gone, replaced by a look of profound, gut-wrenching shame. She was physically trying to make herself smaller, to shrink, to disappear. The turquoise beads that had been a source of such innocent pride just 2 minutes ago now seemed to hang like tiny weights, mocking her. My mama bear instincts, primal and ferocious, roared to life. I walked over to the women, my hands clenched into tight fists at my sides. "Excuse me," I said, my voice dangerously calm, a stark contrast to the inferno raging inside me. "What did you just say about my daughter?" The first woman, the one with the bob, turned to face me, her eyes as cold as ice chips. "I said it's inappropriate. This is a family park." The audacity of it stole my breath. "My daughter's braids are inappropriate?" I asked, my voice rising despite my desperate attempts to keep it level. "Her laughter is inappropriate." The second woman sniffed, looking down her nose at me as if I were something she'd scraped off her shoe. "It's an urban look," she said, as if that single word explained and justified everything. "And honestly, her behavior. She's a bit of a thug running around like that. It's not safe for the other children." Thug. My 8-year-old child. The word hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. The scene was escalating. Other parents were turning to look, their faces a mixture of curiosity and the same pinched, judgmental expressions as these two women. And then in the corner of my eye, I saw it, the glint of a phone, held up to capture the drama. Someone was recording. "She is an 8-year-old girl playing in a park," I said, my voice trembling with a fury so deep it honestly scared me. "She is not a thug. Her hair is beautiful. And you have no right to speak about my child or any child like that." The woman with the bob just smirked, a cruel, triumphant little twist of her lips. "Oh, I think I have every right. We're adoptive parents too," she said, gesturing to her friend with a sickening air of solidarity. "We know how it is. Sometimes you get one with behavioral issues. It's a lot to handle. Maybe you need to get her under control." The implication was vile and crystal clear. That because Maya was a black girl who had come from foster care, she was inherently a problem. That I, her black mother, was inherently incapable of raising her properly. The casual cruelty of it, the public dissection of my daughter's worth and my ability as a mother, was suffocating. I felt hundreds of eyes on us, judging us, siding with these women whose privilege wrapped their blatant racism in a disgusting cloak of feigned concern. Maya had buried her face into my side, her small body shaking with silent, heartbroken sobs. All I could do was wrap my arms around her, trying to shield her from the poison and walk away. The sound of those two women's quiet, satisfied laughter followed us all the way to the car, a haunting soundtrack to the worst day of our lives. The humiliation didn't stop when we drove away from the park. By the next morning the video was everywhere. It had been cleverly and maliciously edited, of course. The clip started with me, my face twisted in anger, yelling, "What did you just say about my daughter?" It completely cut out the women's initial, poisonous comments. The title was some inflammatory clickbait like, "Angry mom goes off on other parents in public park." The comments section was a toxic sewer of hatred and judgment. "She seems completely unhinged. That poor kid. Typical. Always pulling the race card when they don't get their way." Those women seemed genuinely concerned. Why did she have to get so aggressive and hostile? "Look at the girl's hair, it is a little much." They have a point. They had twisted the narrative so expertly that I was no longer the protective mother. I was the villain, the park demon, as one comment called me. They found my name, Elena Rivera. They found my social media, and they found out I was a teacher. Calls began pouring into my school's principal, demanding I be fired for my aggressive and unstable behavior. Then the system got involved. An anonymous complaint was filed with Child Protective Services. It was anonymous, but I knew in my bones who it came from. Suddenly, our entire life was put under a microscope. A social worker named Ms. Albright was assigned to our case. She was a woman in her late 50s with a perpetually tired face and eyes that held zero warmth or empathy. She came to our home, her clipboard held in front of her like both a shield and a weapon. She walked through our small, colorful apartment, her eyes lingering on Maya's paintings, on the books about Black history and art that filled our shelves, on the mural we were painting together. "It's a very culturally specific environment you've created," she commented, her tone making it sound like an accusation, a liability. Her interview with me was an interrogation. "Do you have anger management issues, Ms. Rivera? Several witnesses from the park described you as hostile and aggressive." I tried desperately to explain what had really happened, the racist insults, the attack on my child. She just nodded, a small, patronizing smile playing on her lips. "Perception is reality, Ms. Rivera," she said coolly. "And the perception is that you created a public scene that was deeply distressing for your daughter." In our final meeting, she delivered the line that would haunt my nightmares for months. She glanced at Maya's file, then looked up at me with a weary sigh. "You know, we encourage transracial adoptions, but sometimes some matches just don't work out. Especially with her background." The poison was so skillfully disguised as professional concern. She was telling me my Black daughter didn't belong with me, her Black mother, because the world viewed her as a problem. The social worker's report was a masterclass in biased language and twisted conclusions, recommending court intervention to ensure the child's emotional stability. I was terrified. They were using the lies of two racist women to build a case to tear my family apart. That's when Judge Thompson entered our lives. Our first appearance was in family court, a sterile, intimidating room that smelled of floor wax and fear. I felt so small and powerless, standing there with my overwhelmed court-appointed lawyer. The state's attorney painted a vivid picture of me as an unstable parent whose public outburst had traumatized her child. Then Judge Thompson spoke. He was an older white man with a kind, weathered face and a gentle baritone voice that commanded attention. He looked right at me, not with judgment, but with what seemed like genuine empathy. "I have reviewed the social worker's report," he began, his voice filling the room. "I have also, against my better judgment, viewed the edited video circulating online. And frankly, I am appalled." My heart sank. He was appalled by me. "I am appalled," he continued, his voice gaining strength, "that in this day and age, a mother and her child cannot enjoy a day at the park without being subjected to ignorant, prejudiced harassment." A wave of relief so powerful it nearly buckled my knees washed over me. He saw the truth. "However," he said, his tone shifting, "this incident has become public, and it has clearly distressed the child, Maya." He looked at Maya, who was sitting quietly beside me, and gave her a small, reassuring smile. "My primary concern now is this little girl's well-being. I am issuing a gag order. No one, not you, Ms. Rivera, not social services, is to speak about this case publicly. This is to protect Maya's privacy." Sounded so reasonable, so protective. "And," he went on, "I see a recommendation here for therapy. Think that's wise. It's essential that Maya has a neutral, professional space to work through any trauma. I am therefore mandating weekly therapy sessions for Maya, and joint sessions for you both, with a court-approved therapist. I have a list of excellent pre-vetted professionals. Dr. and Finch comes very highly recommended." He seemed like our savior, a wise, fair judge cutting through the lies. I left that courtroom feeling like I'd been pulled back from the edge of a cliff. I thought the nightmare was over. I was so wrong. The nightmare was just beginning. If you're still here with me, don't forget to subscribe, activate notifications, leave your like, and share this video with someone. At first, Judge Thompson's orders felt like a shield. The gag order meant the relentless online hate began to die down. The mandated therapy, while an unforeseen expense I really couldn't afford, seemed like the responsible thing to do. We began our sessions with Dr. and Finch. Her office was in a sleek, modern building, decorated in muted grays and beige, with cold, sterile abstract art on the walls. Dr. Finch herself was a woman in her 40s with sharp features and a smile that never, ever reached her eyes. In our first session, she was all sympathetic nods and soothing tones. But as weeks turned into a month, a strange and unsettling pattern began to emerge. The sessions felt less like therapy and more like a performance. Dr. Finch's questions always circled back to my anger. "Elena, let's explore your reaction," she'd say, tapping her pen. "You describe feeling fury. Do you often have such strong emotional responses?" It was subtle gaslighting. She was twisting the narrative, just like the women in the park, just like Ms. Albright. She was methodically building a case that I was the problem. She began diagnosing Maya with oppositional defiance when she wouldn't answer invasive questions, or attachment issues from her time in foster care, issues I had never once seen in the 4 years she had been my daughter. Then the bills started coming. $500 a week. I was burning through the little savings I had scraped together for Maya's future. I called Dr. Finch's office to ask about a sliding scale. The receptionist was cold. "Dr. Finch is a court-appointed expert. Her rates are non-negotiable. Payment is expected on time to remain in compliance with the court's order." Compliance. The word sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't about healing, it was about control. The therapy, the mounting debt, the constant subtle jabs at my fitness as a mother. It was a gilded cage, and the judge had locked us in it. I felt completely alone, isolated by the gag order. My friends would ask how things were going, and I'd have to force a cheerful smile and lie. "Things are getting better, the court is really helping." The words tasted like ash. The breaking point came about 3 months in. Dr. Finch was pushing Maya to talk about her feelings of rejection from her birth mother. Maya was getting visibly upset, her knuckles white from gripping her pencil. "I don't want to talk about that," she whispered. "She doesn't have trouble with that." I snapped, my patience gone. "She is a happy, secure child. The only thing she's had trouble with lately is being publicly humiliated, and then forced to come here every week to be psychoanalyzed." Dr. Finch's mask finally dropped. Her eyes went cold as steel. "I will be noting your hostility and lack of cooperation in my report to Judge Thompson," she said, her voice like ice. "It seems your anger issues are more severe than I initially assessed. Perhaps we need to consider if this home environment is truly stable for Maya." The threat wasn't veiled anymore. She was threatening to take my daughter. And I knew with a sudden gut-wrenching certainty that she wasn't acting alone. This was a system. And Judge Thompson wasn't just part of it. He was pulling the strings. That night I didn't sleep. Her threat echoed in my head. I was done being their victim. I decided to fight back not with anger, but with facts. I started with the shoebox full of bills from Dr. Finch. I laid them out on my kitchen table and immediately found a discrepancy. A bill for a full hour-long session on a Wednesday I knew we had missed. Maya had the stomach flu. I had called and cancelled. It was blatant fraud. This was the first crack in their corrupt facade. I sent a formal written request for all of Dr. Finch's session notes, citing a clause in the intake form. 2 days later, a thick manila envelope was waiting for me. I spread the pages out on my table and I felt sick. My words were twisted, my defense of Maya was documented as enmeshment, my questions about her methods called resistance. And then I saw it. Detailed notes for the day Maya had the flu, the session we never attended. Maya presented as withdrawn. Elena was agitated. The mother's emotional instability is a primary contributor to the child's anxiety. She had fabricated an entire session to build her case against me. My rage became cold and clear. The next day, I confronted her, laying the fraudulent notes next to the bill on her polished desk. The color drained from her face, her smile replaced by a flash of pure panic. "You need to be very careful, Elena," she hissed. "Do you really think Judge Thompson is going to believe a hysterical mother over a respected officer of the court?" She didn't realize that in her panic, she had confirmed everything. They were working together. My next step was my court-appointed lawyer. He went pale as he looked at my evidence. "Elena, this is bad," he stammered. "If you accuse a court-appointed expert, and the judge, that's career suicide. For me. And for you." His advice was to pay the bills and not make waves. He was too scared to help. I went to the county social services office, demanding to see Ms. Albright's supervisor. He listened with a blank face and dismissed my evidence. "This is a court matter now," he said condescendingly. "Maybe you should discuss these feelings of persecution with your therapist." It was a perfectly built wall, a closed loop of unaccountable power with Judge Thompson at its center. Just when I felt completely defeated, an email appeared from an anonymous address. The subject: Thompson. The message was short. "I used to work at the courthouse. I know what Judge Thompson and his friends are doing. It's a business. They call it the Family Services Network. They target vulnerable families, create a crisis, and then bill the state and the families for thousands in bogus services. I saw what they were doing to you. It's why I quit. Have documents. If you want to fight, I can help. Signed M." My heart hammered. Was this a trap? I had no choice. I wrote back, "I want to fight." M was Marco, a former clerk in Thompson's court, disgusted by the corruption. He explained the scheme. It started with a trigger like our viral video. Thompson would step in, the reasonable authority figure, and mandate services from his network. Professionals like Dr. Finch would drag out the case, diagnose fake problems, and bill for as many services as possible, with a chunk of the profits funneled back to the judge through a shell corporation. Marco's documents were the missing piece. Emails between Thompson and Finch discussing billing strategies, financial statements showing kickbacks. He became my invisible partner in a secret war. We were gathering a storm. Then late one night Marco sent a message that made my blood run cold. "Elena, I have the last piece. The most dangerous one. We thought Judge Thompson was the head of the snake. He's not. He's just the fangs." He sent me a final encrypted file. It contained documents proving the entire Family Services Network. The business model, the list of professionals, the money laundering scheme, had been designed and was being run by one person, Ms. Albright. The tired, unassuming social worker who had first walked into my home. She identified the targets, she managed the network, she recruited the judge. She was the architect of my family's destruction. The discovery hit me with the force of a physical blow. The quiet bureaucrat was the true mastermind. My next court date, a progress review, was in 2 weeks. That would be our stage. I walked into that courtroom with a button camera pinned to my jacket and a laptop in my bag. Marco had already sent copies of our evidence to an investigative journalist and the FBI, with instructions to release everything on my signal. Dr. Finch gave her polished report, painting me as a difficult parent. Then the judge turned to me. "Ms. Rivera, do you have anything to say?" This was it. "Yes, Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and steady. I walked to the podium. "For months, I have listened in silence. I was told this was for my child's well-being. I have discovered that is a lie." I turned to the court reporter. "This is a scheme orchestrated to enrich a network of court-appointed professionals." The judge's face turned purple. "Ms. Rivera, you are in contempt," he roared. "And I have proof," I shot back. I plugged my laptop into the court's monitor. The first slide showed Dr. Finch's fraudulent note next to Maya's doctor's note. The audio played of her threatening me. The judge banged his gavel. "Bailiff, stop her." But it was too late. The next slide was a flowchart of the money laundering, showing payments to Thompson's shell company. And the final, most shocking slide was an internal memo written by Ms. Albright, laying out the entire business model, referring to vulnerable families as revenue units. Just as bailiffs reached me, the courtroom doors burst open. "B.I. Judge Thompson," the lead agent said, "you are under arrest." Another agent cuffed a stunned Dr. Finch. A third walked quietly over to the seats where Ms. Albright was observing and placed her under arrest as well. The architect, the muscle, and the enforcer, all taken down at once. I took out my phone, typed "justice," and hit send. The story of the family court racket exploded. Other families victimized by Thompson and Albright's network came forward. I told my story to a grand jury, my voice clear and strong. Thompson and Finch were convicted. But the true victory was seeing Ms. Albright, the mastermind who saw my daughter as a revenue unit, sentenced to federal prison for masterminding a criminal enterprise that shattered lives for profit. The real healing, though, happened far from any courtroom. It happened in the quiet moments, just me and Maya. It happened as we painted a new mural on her wall, a giant phoenix rising from ashes, its wings every color of the rainbow. It happened when we went back to the park for the first time, and she ran for the swings, her laughter loud and free, with no shadow of shame anywhere in sight. The world tried to shame my black daughter. A corrupt system tried to profit from our pain. But they failed. They underestimated the power of a mother's love, a force stronger than any gavel, more enduring than any lie. We walked through fire and came out the other side, not just intact, but stronger, our joy reclaimed, our dignity restored. In the end, that was the only victory that truly mattered. Thank you for listening to my story. Please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, comment below, leave your like, and share this video with others.